Hey guys, in this video we'll talk about instrumentalization of AI painters, iPhone 14's satellite distress call, Canva launches virtual suite, Bali tourism metaverse. This year, visitors to the Focus Art Fair were treated to a special kind of exhibition at the MORF Gallery booth. It was a selection of paintings by Vincent van Gogh and Leonardo da Vinci that the general public has never previously been able to see because they are covered over by other works by the two artists. Vincent van Gogh painted the two wrestlers around 1886, and the Oxia Palace startup recreated this underpainting by teaching AI how to reproduce Van Gogh's style through X-ray fluorescence imaging. These high-tech replicas have been dubbed neo-masters. They have the particularity of offering a precise idea of the original color and texture of the long-lost paintings. Oxia's Palace aim is to continue using technology at the service of art restoration. Next, Apple's new emergency text feature on its latest iPhones makes it a first mover in a budding market for low-cost satellite phone connections. The Cupertino, California-based tech giant last week said its new iPhone 14 will be able to beam short distress messages and location data from places off the cellular grid as soon as November. Apple is among companies racing to integrate new technology so that ordinary smartphone users can stay connected in remote areas. The iPhone maker struck an exclusive deal with Globalstar for 85% of the satellite's company network capacity. Apple said last week that its new feature called Emergency SOS via satellite would be free for 2 years. Lastly, Canva is further establishing itself as more than just a user-friendly graphic design tool. The Australian company announced at its Canva Create event that it will unveil a suite of new products to round out its product offerings. Among the new features include Canva Docs, Canva websites, Canva whiteboards, and data visualization, which comes from its acquisition of Flourish. Canva will also expand its print offerings and bring its background removing technology to videos. Canva also plans to launch its API in beta, enabling developers to more easily integrate with the worksuite. Here's something else for you to think about. Bali Twin Metaverse has collaborated with Blackstone Indonesia, Graha di Bali Entertainment, and Kicau Mania to develop Bali Metatourism in the Metaverse world. Through Bali Metatourism, anyone, anywhere, at any time can enjoy the exotic island of Bali virtually as if they were in the real world. In this world of the Bali Metaverse, users can watch the reconstructed lands, buildings, artwork that belongs to Blackstone Indonesia, and even listen to reconstructed animal sounds. This might change the face of tourism for decades to come. However, can the metaverse alter tourism in the future? In summary, an AI X-ray imaging tech procures Van Gogh's lost paintings. Apple iPhone 14 stands out with a newly invested satellite distress call. Canva launches a virtual suite that will expand to include an array of new features. Bali takes tourism to the metaverse to immerse people in augmented reality. And now presenting this week's podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second podcast. And we have Jan with us here again. So, Jan, how are you doing today?
Great. It's a lovely day here in the UK. Happy to be with you, Hannah.
Okay, so let's go with our first news that we saw, which is AI getting more embedded into artwork, right? And this takes us to how nowadays we are using AI in our images, our photo stock. Right. So my question to you is, how do you think AI is going to disrupt Shutterstock?
Well, that's a great question, Hannah. And I mean, I think just for context for people who might not be aware of this, AI is now at a position where you could say anything to it, literally anything, and it will be able to almost instantly create not just one picture, but variations of a picture. So you could say a cat riding on a horse flying on the planet Mars, and it will do that. And you could say, do that in the style of Leonardo da Vinci or Matisse or Picasso. And not only will it do that essentially instantly, but it will give you maybe, I don't know, a couple of variations on that. So, you know, and this is just such an extraordinary capability of the speed at which it could do this, right? The ease with which it can do it, the fact that it's essentially for free at this point. It is just, I think we're experiencing a moment here akin to the first photographs being made. I think that's how disruptive this is going to be. It's breathtaking. So a company like Shutterstock, a multi-billion-dollar company, makes its money by having lots of images on it. For example, at Leadapreneur, we use lots of great artwork. So it might be, a dragon, for example, breathing fire, or an astronaut in space, something like that. And we, like many others, will find those images and pay for them. And that's the kind of the model. Whereas now we could just tell the AI, create a fire-breathing dragon for me in the style of, maybe a particular famous person, in the style of Tolkien, for example, or maybe Game of Thrones. And it will instantly do that for free. And that's just, it's just so disruptive. I don't know how that they're going to come back to that so quickly. This is just extraordinary. So I think what I kind of want to touch on there is the challenge for Shutterstock is to deal with that disruption. But I think there's a greater opportunity to really understand at a humanistic level, because I think that's also important for being a leaderpreneur, to understand the more profound implications that this will reconceptualize what we believe reality even is. Right? What an artist even does. The concept of modernism was birthed in the art world. When photography started to replace the artist, what was the role of an artist? What was even art? And that's why people like Picasso and Van Gogh started to go into surrealism and other modes of art that were at the time just ludicrous. The idea of Van Gogh painting his Starry Night with those swirly art strokes, he was considered a complete nutter, right? Completely mad person. And today he's one of the world's most celebrated artists. So sometimes these enormous changes take some time to filter through. And I think that's what we're seeing there. And so what does this mean when an AI can create any reality we wish? So I think that's what we're really seeing there, Hannah. It's not just a picture, it's a reality, right? You could do anything you want. I mean, what could you say of, show me, with this person on holiday on the beach, right? Show me with Tom Cruise hanging out at the beach, I could say. And, maybe it could do that, or pretty soon it can do that, right? I don't think that'd be too far away. So where do we actually get to understand what reality is and what it becomes down to? I think we're going to see a lot of really challenging conversation about that. And ultimately where I think we're going to go is an age beyond modernism, whereas modernism was challenging to what the traditional world was. Traditionalism is basically about, this is the truth, accept it. Modernism provides different perspective on it. There's different isms: communism, nationalism, environmentalism, feminism, things like that. And I think what we're actually going into is a new age, which is individualism, where we build our own truly individual realities. We're already doing that with the media we consume, the Spotify playlist, the YouTube playlist, and things like this. But now with art and the power that this AI brings us, we'll be able to create our own individual visual realities as we wish. And then the deeper question around it, do we have the ethical capability for that? Can we actually, what happens when we get what we want? I think that will be a really interesting frontier.
And just now when you mentioned about customization, right? That really reminded me of something I was thinking of lately. So I have people coming from Mauritius soon, yeah, and then I have to. So I was looking at my TV, and I'm like, oh, I have to teach them how to use the TV, because in Mauritius not many people have smart TVs. So we are still in the days, not everyone, but some people are still in the days where you switch on the TV, and then whatever channel comes on, you're going to watch that, or you can flip through some channels, right? But nowadays people have smart TVs where you're going to tell them what you want to watch. So I was trying to think, how am I going to explain to these people that you're going to tell the TV what you're going to watch, and flipping through different streaming channels that we have. So I think customization, yes, I mean it's really we don't even realize, because it's just so embedded in our life. We, like, as you mentioned, having Spotify playlists and then whatever else, which is just so customized to our own needs and own personal taste, right? Do you have any thoughts on that before I move on to the next question? Oh, yes, you do.
Yeah, well, it's a great example, isn't it? Of I've always just watched TV. Now I can decide what to watch, or what do I even want to watch, right? It's actually very difficult, because as many of us have sat in front of Netflix, or you choose your favorite streaming program, well, what do I actually watch, right?
Yeah.
Well, that choice is a good idea, but it's not. But one thing, Hannah, I wanted to comment on, like, I think it's useful to use the past to understand the present. So I think where we are with digitalization is a little bit like where we were with electrification 100 years ago in the early 20s, right? Electricity at that time was still pretty radical, right? Most people in the world did not have electricity in the 1920s. The vast majority didn't. And the combustion engine, which sort of helped scale electricity, was only just beginning. And so I think, electricity has allowed us then to arrive at something like the internet 100 years later. So let's say, you know what, let's say for imagine you've got 100 million people, 1 billion people interfacing with AIs in real time, creating their own individual realities. I wonder if there might be an opportunity there to kind of to birth a collective human consciousness. You know, what if we're all talking to the AI at the same time, all asking it to create our worlds for us, but there will be a commonality in it. There'll be a high level dialogue in it. And so, you know, it's a bit like maybe someone in the 1920s sending a message through a telegraph, you know, the beeping thing, beep, 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 right? And saying, imagine if everyone at the same time on planet Earth could telegraph at the same time, right? Well, that's essentially the internet, just, you know, but sort of in the language of its time. So I think what we're seeing here, these breakthrough technologies, is this real transition in what is possible in an exponential manner. And this was talked about a lot before, but in the end, it comes back down to we're sitting in front of our TV asking what do we want to watch. And that's just going to be something that I think we might actually end up preferring to follow, right? We tend to follow maybe people who create a curated Spotify playlist. Rather than build your own Spotify playlist, maybe we want to follow those of others. We don't. Of course, it's nice to think of our own thoughts, but maybe a thoughtful podcast series is also great, right? So there's this interesting thing around individualism where, yeah, you're totally free to do anything you want, but you become paralyzed in that freedom. So, and so then I think to navigate through that, we'll have to talk to our AI friends, and that's where they will see this fusion of humanity becoming more this sort of I don't know if this is the right word, but homo techno. So like really fusing into technology. You know, today you can't separate a human from their smartphone, right? It's just not. I try it, but I'm already addictively picking up 15 minutes later. I can't move around my house without carrying this damn device
Exactly.
around.
Yes.
And so I think that's also where we don't yet recognize that, but it's already here, is that fusion of the human and the technology in a more intimate way. And maybe that's an opportunity to get to know ourselves as well.
Okay, so on this note, let me move to my next question, which I was keeping it for the last one, but I'll just bring it up now, which is about the metaverse tourism that we've just seen Bali going into metaverse tourism, right? So when I read the news, I sort of got excited thinking that, you know, when you go out visiting a place, right? So when I went to Bali, I don't remember much of the places because you've seen it just for a few moments and then you've probably went to another place and like you're busy with your friends and all. But what if I had the moment to really immerse myself in the architecture of the places they had, or in the temples, really go and see the little minute details of those places? That would really get me going, and I'll be excited to try it out. So when I saw metaverse tourism, so then yeah, I was excited. What about you? What do you think?
I guess I've noticed more and more. Maybe it's because I'm getting older. That at my first, I'm very skeptical.
Oh no, yeah, you're not. Are you really? No, you're not old. Sure, what are you talking about?
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you very much. I am indeed 25 years old. Yes. Well, I guess so. So I was a bit cynical at first, and I think right now it's not necessarily going to set anything crazily on fire in the sense of, oh my God, wow, we're all suddenly going to go into the virtual Bali rather than getting on a plane. But what it can be is, there are many people who might like to experience Bali and its wonderful culture, and just it's a fabulous place, isn't it? So, but they might not necessarily have the opportunity to go straight away, or certainly do in the depth that they can. So I think, the idea of empowering people to explore something that they otherwise wouldn't, or to empower them to the level that they normally might not be able to, right? It is really, really powerful. And again, who is the audience from this? There's large numbers of people in all parts of the world who might be interested in exploring this. And so I think that's a really exciting idea, to open up that frontier and give people an opportunity to experience and enjoy that. That being said, though, I think that there will be this sort of more value placed on the real reality, right? Because as we can kind of sort of all visit Bali in a perfect digital recreation, powerful as that may be, it's not the same as standing on the beach or kite surfing across the waters there, or indeed visiting the temples or whatever it might be. So I think we'll see a bit of both, but I think it's a very positive and exciting thing to do and explore.
Yay. So I think our next Bali trip would definitely happen, because it can happen anytime. I'm like, yeah, next meeting is in Bali. Well,
but then to make that point, if in the future I was to say, right, guys, we're going to Bali, but instead of hopping on the plane, I'd give you all a bunch of AirAsia, some Oculus Rift goggles, and said, "Let's go." I'm not sure what would you think about that, Hannah? What would you think that's fun?
I'm gonna totally be in. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that could be cool, right? If you fly on the plane to Bali, right? So you're kind of getting an immersion experience. You get on the plane, put the goggles on or whatever it might be. And as you're flying on that 3-4 hour flight, you get an opportunity to immerse. So you can kind of run around inside of Bali before you get there, right? So then when you get to Bali, you might already know what to do. I mean, it could even be useful things like some people get about,
Interesting.
when I get to the airport, how do I get a taxi to my hotel,
Oh my
right?
God.
How
That
all
is,
those things,
yeah,
right?
that's so, oh my God. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just now when I was planning Singapore, I was going through Google, doing the 3D sort of, not a 3D, 360. You know, in Google, you can do 360. And I was like, oh my God, why isn't the entire Singapore like available on a 360 for me to just go around the streets and see it? Because not all the streets were there. I mean, yeah, oh my God. Yeah, I think that's a new business idea we should look into. Right.
Yeah, right. And that will be an interesting way, because those are sort of, I think the trick is to find those sort of key moments where people are really interested, right? Am I going to sit down in my normal everyday, put on some virtual goggles and really explore Bali? Honestly, no. I'll put it on my to-do list. It'll be number 7. I'll never get around to doing it. But if I'm on the plane and I'm bored and I'm flying to Bali, absolutely, right? That's a captured environment, isn't it? And then obviously there's what's possible in there is the commercialization of it, right? Because maybe you could sell some tickets to a show. Maybe there's a nice dance going on, or a nice restaurant, or whatever it might be. So then there's a viability factor involved in that. And of course, a lot of customization. You could set your budget, you could set your cultural preferences, etc. So I think that's where we might see some really interesting things happen, because they're very niche spaces, but there'll be a lot of interest in that space, right? What if the Bali Tourism Board worked with AirAsia to give everyone, I don't know, 1,000 virtual goggles or something like that, and see what would happen? It'd be cool.
Okay, I'm gonna set next meeting with Tony for you to talk to
Okay,
him about this
Tony,
idea.
got an idea.
All right, so let's move on to the next news that got me pretty excited again. It's the satellite phone distress calls that iPhone will now make available. Now, as I was telling you earlier, I am not an iOS fan, but seeing that feature got me thinking that maybe I should just get an iPhone just to have that satellite phone tech, even though I'm not really sure why I might need it. I don't usually get lost. I mean, I don't go out to get lost that much, but just just to have, like, oh hey, I have a satellite phone. so that got me really excited. What do you think about it?
I think it's a cool feature that will probably have limited use, but the people who use it in their right moment will obviously really benefit from it. I want to just kind of step back, because I was looking at Elon Musk announced, I think it was yesterday, the day before, on Twitter, that Starlink has now essentially achieved global coverage. So it's now, there's enough satellites in place. It's now more legal stuff like sanctions and licenses and stuff like that. And as it was showing this sort of, it was like a James Bond movie, in the past, where you had the Earth and all these satellites orbiting around. And this is something like 30 years ago was just unimaginable. This was like hundreds of years away, right? And now it's there. I could just buy a Starlink dish here in the UK, slap it in my garden, and I have satellite internet. It's just incredible what this will enable. And so, the feature of in the UK, next to where I used to work, there's a building called Inmarsat, which is a UK satellite maker. And to have an Inmarsat phone would cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Like, it was something that you'd only have if you're like on a ship, really, like a container ship, like a big ship, and it was like a large number kind of thing. And now you can just have it in your iPhone. This represents the enormous leaps that we're making. So I think it's not so much just that one particular niche feature. It's the infrastructure behind it that makes it possible. Although I think, as you said, in Apple's case, it's not Starlink that's providing the access. It's another provider, isn't it? But just that's possible is just so extraordinarily powerful. And where this again may take us in 10 years' time, right? 10 years' time, 20 years' time, it is just extraordinary. If you see a lot of inventions, for example, the laser, when it was invented, no one knew what it'd be useful for. but today modern society couldn't function without lasers. So it's often interesting to have these sort of infrastructure level innovations, because they've just provided a foundation for any, think of, maybe there's someone talented in India who'll come up with one use that they couldn't do without Starlink. Maybe someone else in Indonesia comes up with suddenly a sat-nav phone that enables a whole village that couldn't be enabled before. Someone in the Brazilian jungle needs something. Maybe someone, dare I say it, but in the UK, we also have lots of black patches where you can't get good internet, right? So it's not just, sort of what might say is the obvious cases, but it's really providing that next level of connection and datafication of the world, because it's also about that reliability. It's not, for example, using electricity. It's not just turning the light bulb on once. It's always knowing that the light bulb will always turn on whenever you want to press the button. And so that sort of electrification is really about the consistency. And so datafication is not just that there's an internet connection, but it's stable, consistent, and always available. That lays in the foundation for more things to be built upon it. So yeah, coming back to what you were saying in the story, we're gonna see some great stories coming out about how people were saved by that iPhone satellite feature. But I think it's the power behind it was just, where we'll be in 10 years' time will be just amazing.
I gotta go check out that Starlink news, because I messaged the president of Mauritius once, and I told the person, can you please contact Elon Musk and get satellites positioned above Mauritius just to get Starlink in Mauritius, because the internet is quite crappy sometimes. So yeah, I'm gonna go check that out.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, interesting that often the conversation comes up, the sort of digital divide, right? And I think you and me and probably the people listening to this are in the digital reality, right? So we're not, but there are people, and especially you see this in Germany, they just don't use digital technology. It's like they live in the 80s or 90s. There's just no digital truth. And that creates such a divide between people. Now, of course, if you're willing and you want to not engage with technology, that's fine. But a lot of people are cut off not through choice, but because of lack of access. So I think that democratization feature of Starlink, and especially, that power of being able to subvert against censorship. At the moment, it seems like there's some real challenges going on in Iran, for example, or even look at the Ukraine conflict, where Zelensky has been quite clear in saying that Starlink has played an important role in sustaining Ukraine's war effort, and even its people coming together, families staying in touch, whatever it might be. So I think there's much greater considerations to take into account there as well.
Yeah, great reference, man. I'm shocked you remembered that about that Starlink went to Ukraine. Okay, so let's go to our last point here, which is about Canva. So recently Canva came out with lots of new features, and they came out with a website feature where you can actually build your website on Canva and just deploy it. There was this document feature where you can build documents now, just like Word doc or Google Doc. And lots of them, but then the most important one to me was the whiteboard experience, because recently when we've been working out Cosmos with Shen, he's using a good whiteboard in Jira, but I couldn't have that in Canva. So I was using some other software which I wasn't really happy to. I was like, why can't Canva really have it out? And I was so shocked to see it coming, just last week, and then an entire whiteboard was here for me to do whatever I want. So just to see such platforms, right, like Canva, like Figma, they're really out there solving user problems. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, you introduced me to Canva, Hannah, and I, that was really a moment for me where I thought I knew about tools and stuff, and then not only did I not know about this tool, but you were clearly vastly better than me at using it and the creative output you could produce, right? And that was really transformational and humbling, right? And so what I have come to believe is the amazing tools are out there, and it's more about our ability to learn about the tools that holds us back. And I think that's really where there's a bottleneck. First, of the human learning capability per se, right? Are you interested in learning? Are you willing to learn? And often it comes down to an awareness stuff. If you don't know about it, you don't know about it, right? And even if you may know about it, you may not fully understand just how powerful it can be. So I think there's not too much that can be done about that at some level. Like there's a certain human rate of learning. But what is different is that the tools are available and they're affordable. So I think what is exciting for people is that if they want to go out and create, those tools are available to them, and in a democratized sense. They don't cost $10,000 to access, right? They're very straightforward, and you just click a button. I've just been reading a lot about sort of Microsoft's agile transformation and transformation into an AI factory and things like this. And what part of going back in time, it was saying, once upon a time, you bought software in a shop on a CD, right? You had to go to the shop to buy a
Oh my
floppy
God.
disk.
Or a floppy disk. Oh, I was just going to say that.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Floppy disk.
right?
Yeah. Shit.
And that was saying that, that's worth remembering. That's where Microsoft, in the 90s, you'd buy Windows in a shop on a CD, right? And that was the totally normal thing to do. There was not a crazy thing. That was advanced, quite frankly, right? Because you're not losing floppy disks, at least. And so to see how far we've come in our ability to democratize access to these powerful creative tools, right? Like Figma, like Canva, and many others out there, I think really just shows how we are building a better world and empowering people. And then it just comes down to actually being able to use those tools effectively. And that's I think what Leadapreneur is really about, as much as anything else. It's not just about having the creative know-how. It's the will to actually go out and build a better world, and also the ethical ability to do so in a way that is can be understood as good.
Wait, I was trying to find that.
Long dramatic.
Wait. I was trying to find the mantra. I forgot to read the mantra.
You got the mantra. God damn it, Hannah. You need to do 10 more mantras. Well, every day for a week, 10 mantras a day.
Yeah, it's there on my desktop in a sticky note with it. Yeah. So funny, because I was going to use that as my ending message today. Like, this has been a fun podcast, Jan. Thank you so much for your time. And I would like to remind our audience out there to believe in yourself, be brave. Sorry, I'm reading it out. Be bold, be brilliant, and build your better world. And we shall see you next week.
Yes, thank you very much, Hannah. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Leadapreneurs YouTube channel to get your weekly updates.